It will become a history now.
Does it make sense?
Okay.
You're not really related to AI, so I wanted to briefly explain why does this conversation make sense. So as a conversation introduction, I would say that most of the people talking usually about AI, these are the kind of the people that are deeply ingrained inside AI's research, development. Those are the people that are out there on the front lines developing artificial intelligence technology. What we lack, definitely, is a broad business insight, but not from the people that are in the front lines, but from the people that have a deep knowledge about each of the technology segments, like yourselves, and possibly have that view or have their own opinions about the artificial intelligence, or have some specific areas while talking to your customers, doing a day-to-day business, and you come across artificial intelligence discussions now and then. Most of your customers probably do not develop artificial intelligence systems, software, hardware, and so on. So I invited you to hear about your opinions, about your view of the horizontal business unit spectrum with Intel in mind, but also in worldwide technology and the business in mind. So my guests are Kamil, Miłosz, and Michał. So we'll start with Miłosz because you're holding a microphone.
Okay, let's start with me.
You can say a couple of words about what you do. What's your title? Where do you work? Where are you from?
So I work at Intel, and I'm a field application engineer. I work with IoT customers across EMEA territory, and I, on daily basis, help with development of IoT designs from hardware perspective, but it also involves some software involvements, engagements. So yeah, basically that's it.
FAE and IoT, let's decrypt those two acronyms.
Field application engineer and Internet of Things.
Group. Very good. What's the field application engineer? Do you develop applications?
No, definitely not. I'm only supporting my customers when they need some technical guidance, technical advisory. I'm orchestrating the whole design from A to Z, let's say, from the beginning, like from development to deployment and then scaling the design.
So you're basically technical sales representative.
That's right.
The IoT group at Intel. Kamil.
It's me. Hi, I'm Kamil. Following the same way of introducing myself and all of the guys here with me. I'm Kamil Guzik, industry technical specialist. That's my role. It sounds not very trivial, I must say. I'm also a technical salesperson. I would say I'm a technological evangelist, and I focus on client computing group products. And client computing group product is the forefront of Intel's portfolio, because most of our customers who are maybe not necessarily very familiar with technology itself, they might see this blue sticker on their laptops. And this laptop is my area of expertise. Not only laptops, desktops too, some of the connectivity solutions, and also some technologies around that, like graphics, like adjacencies, and so on.
So you're basically doing laptop stickers.
No, but I keep believing that that's the first phase of Intel, so to say. So when sometimes I'm having some conversations with people around and they do not know what Intel is, I'm saying, take a look at your laptop, open it, and you will see the sticker. I'm not doing those stickers, I'm helping customers to build those laptops, but this is the phase of Intel, first phase of Intel.
Now every time I'll see the sticker on my laptop or PC, I will think about Kamil Guzik.
Yeah, and that's wishful thinking, I would say.
Let's hear about Michał.
Hello guys, my name is Michał Novak, working at Intel for about 5 years already. So my 5 years anniversary is coming. So just for your information, guys.
Congratulations.
We need to celebrate. I survived. So my role is similar to Kamil's. I'm the ITS, which stands for Industry Technical Specialist or Industry Technology Specialist, which is quite unique because in other companies outside Intel, we don't have such a role. It can transfer to the pre-sales engineer. I think it's the closest one. But I think our role is more broad than that. I would say we are the people with both technical and business acumen that we are using on an everyday basis. So that's an engineer, because we are all trained engineers. We have the degrees of the engineers, but we are customer facing, and that's the big difference versus the, let's say, traditional engineer that is building something.
So all of you, you're not developing anything. You barely have any code design or hardware design stickiness during your daily jobs. You are sales representatives.
I would say not professionally, because on the hobby side we can develop something. I, for example, created some simple web pages or something like that. That's still some kind of developing job, but professionally, no.
But you definitely sometimes have that stickiness to the design, schematics,
Yes.
layouts, code out view, depending on the customer, right?
That's actually what I wanted to say, that we need to have a deep understanding, I mean, maybe not deep, but deep from the perspective of end user, perspective on Intel technologies. So we need to understand some of the code pieces, we need to understand how hardware is translated to the business, and we need to take this whole sum and make a nice streamline into the customer head, so to say.
Most of the people don't really understand how Intel's business works, and that's actually true about most of the big corporations, because it's so scattered in terms of different business units, different organizations. So, which organization do you belong to at Intel?
Client Computing Group, which stands for, it's a acronym of CCG.
That's the business unit.
That's the business
name.
unit. And I belong to Sales and Marketing, which is our big mother of everyone who is related to sales.
To sales.
At Intel.
And how is that different from the business unit structure? Is it a separate group? Do you report to people who are directly directing a CCG business unit, for example, or is this a separate unit when it comes to the business structure?
It's actually a separate unit, but we are taking bits and pieces from other BUs. And we also have a nice convergence point, which is business unit sales, which is a nice combination of sales and marketing inside the business unit. And this is how Intel's workforce is actually organized. And I believe it's a right setup, because if we have any technical expertise need or we need any support from the business unit, we can get it directly from there, from United States, from Asia, sometimes from here locally, from Poland, for example, or Europe. At the same time, we can talk to some of the sales and marketing business unit representatives, but at the same time, we have our own KPIs and we need to retire them inside our own ecosystem here in, for example, Gdańsk Group and Inside Sales.
Sure. So CCG, IoT, and how is your business unit called?
It is called with the very catchy name of DPG, which stands for Data Platforms Group.
It used to be called the DCG, I believe.
DCG, yes, so the Data Center Group, but now it's more broader than that. And even within the DPG, we have a different segments, different kind of the business. Yeah? So, for example, we have enterprise, we have cloud, we have HPC. That's quite different customer type, but as a base of all of these things, there is a data first of all, because it's all about the data, how it is moving, how it is stored, how it is being used, and the platforms that we as a Intel, are developing on an everyday basis, and we are helping our customers to develop their own platforms for that data.
So that's basically the structure of Intel's business. Are those three business units key pillars of Intel's income, Intel's strategy? Can we say that these are the three key pillars of the Intel's business, basically? Would that be true statement?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's the true statement from our structure, at least for now. And these are the three major pillars. And as a company, we have this direction of being a data-centric company. So it's again all about the data, and data is everywhere. It's in a data center, it's in IoTG on the edge, it's in a CCG as well, on devices that are producing basically the data. So it all kind of connects together, all of these three pillars, I guess.
It's all about data. Miłosz, can you say a few words, because we heard it already from Michał, a couple of words were said by Kamil as well about the job scope.
Mm-hmm.
I believe IoT world is so fragmented, so scattered, that it's barely hard to really define the job scope, because you definitely have a lot of verticals there. We will talk about that definitely in a couple of minutes. But I wanted to somehow structure your job scope. If you could say just in two sentences, what is your job scope?
While CCG or data center group, these are quite old or mature business units, whereas IoTG is relatively young BU, because couple of years ago, actually we can remember these times where IoTG didn't exist, right? We had like edge devices, but they were not connected to any networks. So we had embedded market, but it wasn't IoTG, because we of course know a lot of edge devices which have some computational power, but it was never connected to anything. For example, a car. Nowadays we have a lot of semiconductors in cars, but only right now they are interconnected and working as an IoT product. So we, as IoTG, started with taking bits and pieces from different BUs and connecting all those together. So I wouldn't say that IoTG is a key pillar of Intel strategy, but it wouldn't exist without this whole application, which is IoTG, wouldn't exist without any other, without all those components.
So it's a binding force of the edge technology,
synergy,
basically, around the world. So we have three guys which are predestined to work in three different scopes, which are kind of the basic structure of the technology out there. So we have a client segment, we have an edge, and the cloud. But you're not really deeply ingrained inside the artificial intelligence technology whatsoever. I wanted to briefly talk about the artificial intelligence wave, because in the past we saw a couple of AI waves the first one started with Alan Turing in 1950, who started with breaking the Enigma code and so on. And then between 1952 up to 1974, around that timeline, we saw a very big outbreak of fascination of artificial intelligence. We had first neural networks being developed. It wasn't a deep learning back then, but people tried to swallow all this new research field so deeply that one of the opinions that we can recall is, for example, people were saying that within the 10 years, a digital computer will be the world's chess champion, and within 10 years, a digital computer will discover and prove an important new mathematical theorem. Another opinion was that within a generation, the problem of creating artificial intelligence will substantially be solved, which appeared not to be really true. Then back in the 70s, we had the first so-called AI winter, which outbreaked because of the criticism and financial setbacks caused by the level of, the difficulty of the problem that people weren't really able to tackle. Then again, another AI wave outbreak in 1980s, the second boom, where we had a lot of expert systems adopted by corporations around the world, big aggressive research funding, which led to the second AI winter back in 90s, that was created by this kind of a economical bubble, the classical, economical bubble caused by the fascination created by different big organizations who were funding a lot of researchers. The commercial vendors couldn't develop a wide variety of workable solutions and use AI in a practical way. Then we had a Deep Blue beating Kasparov in 1997, where we saw the third rise of artificial intelligence outbreak that caused the third big fascination of this technology. We saw, the first decade of 23rd century was showing a lot of potential again for the third time in the history. So we saw the outbreak of deep learning technology, rise of GPU engines that allowed us to consume more computational power, which led to neural network development and so on. And we are still in this third wave of AI technology sort of drive, right? And I want to raise the question, when is the third AI winter coming? Or do we really see as much potential in artificial intelligence that is really there? Is it something that is a real world factor that can bring this much goodness into the people's lives as we think it will, right? Because we may also be so fascinated by the artificial intelligence that we are trying to push it in every corner of our lives nowadays, even during basic customer conversations and so on. So I wanted to ask Kamil, AI's significance in the client technological segment, how important it is?
It is important. That's the answer. Quick answer, but I would elaborate, of course. if we begin bottoms up, because obviously we could start from the other angle, starting from the cloud and data center, but where we go bottoms up, I would say that client, so AI has been with client and PC for ages, actually, and it will stay with us for a long time, for sure. That's what I believe will happen. When is this winter coming? I have no clue. But what I can say, not everyone is acknowledging that starting from the first clicks into your PC, you are already utilizing some of the AI workloads. It can be secure login. It can then be some ink to text translation. It can then be some creator tool, which can have an acceleration on blurring your background, on removing noises in the background, etc. So I believe there is a lot to do in the AI space in client. And there are two main factors. First is Intel working with ISVs and optimizing software to work with some of the engines and accelerators that we build into the hardware and silicon. And second is us delivering those engines inside the silicon. And we've started a couple of years ago in client with our Ice Lake platform for consumer, where we already incorporated some of the artificial intelligence engines with VNNI, DP4A, with new graphics that we just introduced recently, and it will stay with us. And my deep belief is that at some stage, most of the applications that we are using on our day-to-day job activities and so on in front of the PC will be AI accelerated, and it will stay with us for a long time.
So you're saying basically that all of the clients out there, whether if it's a mobile client or a PC or a laptop, whatever, are utilizing artificial intelligence power, which is associated whether with if it's a security aspect or a productivity aspect, it's there.
Yes.
Once you start up your PC, it's there running.
It can run faster, it can run slower,
Obviously,
of course,
yeah.
Depending if we have a powerful CPU, if we have special accelerators to accelerate those workflows. But yes.
Is that the same with the cloud? How important
we would
it
need
is?
to start with the question, what is the cloud and how you understand the cloud? Yes?
Basically.
Basically, yes, because cloud in general is just a different model of getting the data, of managing the data, also, the paying for some data, yes, and implementing some of the solutions. It's not like a ready product. It's like a different view. It's an evolution from the classic data center, let's say. And the main goal of the cloud is to do things more efficient, faster, simpler than that. And it's with the big benefit both from the end customer, for a consumer like us, for example. Let's take as an example the Spotify. We don't need to store a music, data on our PCs. We have it online somewhere in the cloud, and we don't care really where those files really are located. We have it like that immediately. And as well for companies, for professional companies who in the past were building, the data centers, their own solutions, platforms. Now they can just simply rent it and pay for a usage. It's a very efficient way of doing the business and just using the data. And it's the same with the AI, I think. That's the main benefit. When you put the AI that probably for most of the people it is something complicated, it's something complex, especially when you want to use the platform, when you want to build the platform for some AI computations. Now you can have it in the cloud and you can just rent the space, the time for some AI things. So it's again very shorten the way or time to market for the apps developers and us as users.
So apart from cloud being a good platform for artificial intelligence development or some services that you can use, basically, creating such a platform requires you to have back in your mind that someone would like to use some artificial intelligence workloads inside.
Yeah, absolutely. It means it depends on which side are we standing. Are you standing on the customer side, end user, or you are working for let's say Microsoft and you are responsible for building the Azure instance for AI. To build it first, you need to possess some kind of knowledge. You need to, build a certain solution on a certain hardware, benchmark it, and make sure that it's optimal, efficient. And this is, by the way, where Intel helps big hyperscalers like Microsoft or AWS to build it. We have so-called cloud-optimized instances. That's including also the AI. But when you are on the other side, when you are a consumer, you really don't care. You are just caring about the, your usage of the AI workload. You are not thinking what's in the background. So it depends on which side you are as a person.
What about the edge? What about IoT world?
It's basically the same. That on a daily basis, you don't see the powerful AI working behind those devices which you are using on daily basis. You go to a hospital, you go to the shop, and everything which has CPU inside, maybe not everything, but 90% nowadays is driven by AI algorithms, or maybe not driven, but optimized. Wherever you see camera on the street, it is to some extent optimized by AI. So in this big data world, when we are flooded by data, with these AI algorithms, we limit or maybe analyze and store data which is only relevant to the certain application. So on the edge or maybe IoT world, actually AI is everywhere, and this winter, which you mentioned, I don't see it coming.
This time. There are certain limitations that some of the people are foreseeing to be happening within the next decade, but we haven't seen a data outbreak at this scale anywhere in the history. So this is definitely some of the factors that we need to keep in mind, that the edge is this data acquisition factor in our workload pipeline. So everything you put inside the cloud needs to be collected somewhere, and that's basically
that's where edge devices comes in handy, right?
Mm-hmm. CCG is a core business of Intel. Can we say such a thing?
We can say it's bringing most of the Intel's revenue. We shouldn't be saying it's core. I think we are all in the symbiosis. We are all together, and we are also a very inclusive company. So we tend not to say someone is better or someone is worse. Significance of CCG, Client Computing Group, and PC as a form is huge.
Is there a lot of focus on AI within the CCG? How much room do we have for investing in innovations?
I think it's all like a nicely working machine with a lot of different engines. With the endpoint, so classical PC, we more focus on accelerators again, and making sure that we are using potential of the software and potential of the development tools that we are also providing. And we are using this potential to the full form, to the full speed in our modern client devices. So we have a couple of focuses. One of them is platformization, which is essentially building PCs that work like user would like it to work. From simple things like instant access and booting within a second or two, ending with performance, and not only pure computational performance, but also performance in the sense of artificial intelligence and its engines, to the visual aspects, so graphics, and also adjacencies, which can be connectivity, Wi-Fi 6 and technologies attached to that, because if we are working with the human touch point of the data-centric vision, as Michał said, we need to have a device that will fulfill our needs and will not limit us in our performance and the creativity that we may have in our mind.
Sure, but this is definitely not the core focus when it comes to innovation and tech development inside the CCG.
It's one of the tiles.
It's one of the tiles, okay. Pat Gelsinger is Intel's CEO, and he recently announced that the DPG group will be restructured into two new business units, we can say. So now from the data plane group, we have one business unit which is focused solely on edge, and one which is solely focused on the data center.
Yeah, we like reorgs. That's definitely something that we like. We can expect some changes almost every year, but when you think about it, it's good because we are aligning to what is the market, to our customer needs, to the trends. So we are not like a static company. We are very, very dynamic companies. So from that perspective, those changes are very good. And what you just said, changing the DPG strategy or making some new entities within the DPG. It's also connects to our strategy of giving the customer more choices. So when we are talking about the AI, we all know that for many years it was strictly related to the GPU platform with one particular company. So now we want to change this behavior because our customers would like to have a choice, a broader choice, not only about the companies, also about the different platforms. So that's why where we are heading with what Pat announced was this XPU model. So X means everything basically. It could be CPU, it could be GPU, it could be IPU, or any other device, any other module that you can use for computing or accelerating the power.
But AI will be definitely one of the key focuses inside the data center group, right?
Absolutely, yes.
So one of the workloads that you're focusing when talking about XPUs will be this artificial intelligence branch, which is not so isolated when it comes to the CCG group, for example, when it comes to the whole strategy, right?
Yes, absolutely. It connects to another term, which is edge to cloud in terms of the AI. So we want AI not to be centralized somewhere, but in general to be everywhere. Yes, it can be in a data center, it could be in the cloud, but it could be on the edge, the small AI module. So AI is everywhere, and I just want to add that Intel as a company is looking into the AI for many years right now. Yeah, so even I joined like 5 years ago, and it was already there. The topics related to the AI, the products related to the AI. So we developed some products and solutions back then. So we are not a new on the market. We are there.
So how is that actually combined? Because I'm hearing edge inside the DPG group, and then there is the edge inside the IoTG group. How is this combined when it comes to Intel's strategy on the edge?
I think that those two components must exist together, because edge without cloud would be maybe not useful, but much less powerful. And cloud, because the data center and cloud meaning is growing exponentially, but edge is that actually the place where we acquire data and where we create data.
Sure.
So this power of the cloud maybe wouldn't be so useful.
So how much effort Intel puts into AI strategy inside the IoTG group?
In IoTG, we are split in several verticals, and I don't see any vertical where we don't see AI. So I think that everywhere we can put some AI capabilities, we are doing so.
You have specific targets. Every salesperson have their specific targets when it comes to sales, of course. So if we talk about specific business strategy, we need to have some kind of a setup.
Mm-hmm.
We usually call them targets, KPIs, whatever. Do we see any of those existing inside the CCG group, the client computing group?
Maybe not directly, but we are incentivized and we are measured on, for example, graphics sales. We are measured on CPU sales. We are measured on some of the adjacencies that might connect to the artificial intelligence, but AI attach rate or AI how popular AI is, or how used AI is, or utilized AI is. We do not have a direct target. It's part of the global targets of Intel.
So we are not measuring those in terms of the client segment directly, but we're
not from the sales side.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I know that business unit has some AI indicators for sure inside
Absolutely.
CCG.
Mm-hmm.
But from the sales and marketing perspective, it's not, I guess, easy to measure the direct AI attach rates.
That's a good point, actually,
in CCG,
how difficult it is to actually measure the portion of AI that you're actually selling, or maybe not selling. Selling is not always a good word. Maybe helping to develop technology, building an ecosystem, right? Helping out your customers to build artificial intelligence tech world.
Yeah, we always had some special KPIs that were connected to customer satisfaction, for example. And when we speak about ISV works,
what's
or
an ISV?
Individual software vendors,
Mm-hmm.
so software developers.
Yep.
And whilst working with them, we do measure some kind of satisfaction, or we are kind of tracking those projects.
How satisfied are ISVs?
How satisfied they are, or how much our libraries are utilized, for example.
Can we tell how satisfied are ISVs?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. We know that our software vendors, who are actually very close to us, and we actually hire a lot of software developers, so their satisfaction rate is somehow tricky, and we all know about it while working with them. But it's more about satisfaction of the direct ISV developers, but also software vendors and their purchasing sales managers and people who are on the front line and who are actually selling the software at the end of the day.
How satisfied are customers inside the cloud group?
Very satisfied. We have very good rebates, marketing programs, and obviously the our sales force in general, yeah, in terms of the people, yeah. But talking seriously, it's not about satisfaction, like how happy you are with the current products. I think, especially within my range of work, so the data center, is more about how customer can rely on Intel on a predictable platforms, predictable innovation in, let's say, 3, 5, 10 years time frame. Yeah?
Can people rely on Intel's architecture?
I think so. That's why we have majority on the market still, and it's not changing so fast. Obviously, we have some competition, especially recently, that we treat very seriously. But I think that it gives us better motivation for a further development. But yeah, most of the companies still building data centers based on Xeon, and I think that will not change very quickly.
So how do you measure the AI sales performance when it comes to
the AI? Sorry,
the AI sales performance.
Sales performance. Okay, so in my case, when we talk about the data center, the main product is a Xeon CPU. That's, I think, one of the most famous products of Intel. So within those Xeon, obviously on a silicon level, we have certain piece of the software, certain piece of the algorithm. We call them accelerators. One of them, if not the most important one, is something called AVX 512 or more specifically VNNI, which is the part of that.
That's actually one of the technologies that we can find also in basic clients,
Absolutely.
Right?
So not only Xeon, but also other CPUs. So going back to your question, how we measure that, some of the companies are not using that because they are not using any of the AI. So this kind of software is not something that they are using. But the others, it's very interesting for them to, first of all, be aware that we have something like that. Secondly, how it works. And then how it compares to the, as I said at the beginning, the alternative solutions like the GPU. Because there is common misconception, I think, that the GPU is the only right platform, which is not true. And we have results on that, we have benchmarks, we have examples.
So you're basically measuring the portion of workloads being pushed through.
Yeah, exactly.
Example,
So with my set of the customers that I know that they produce some AI workloads, that's typically more software companies. I measure how much they use the VNNI in Xeon as a platform, as a foundation for their computing power.
Great. How do we do that inside IoT Group?
It's a starting point here would be that we are not traditional sales, not all of us, right? We are like maybe advisors, trusted advisors. We are trying to understand.
You're guiding people.
But first, we're trying to understand customers' challenges, business challenges, and what, at the end of the day, business outcomes they would have. So if our customers, because we are building specific applications, if these applications are on the market, up and running, it means that was a successful story. So I wouldn't measure that by any KPI, and by Excel file or something like that. I would rather say that if we build strong relationship with customer, that's something we should focus on. And that's what we are doing actually in IoTG. So of course, there are KPIs. There are different factors where we can measure things, but the success story of a customer is a success story of our group. I would put it this way.
So you're basically trying to combine the ecosystem of IoT world. Well, we know that there are a lot of different devices out there. The edge nodes collecting data and transmitting them. One of the things that I'm trying to understand is what actually, because I know what the edge node might be, but what actually is the client product? What is the client? Can you define client?
Endpoint mainly. So
an edge node could be a client as well.
I would say no. Endpoint that human is actively using as a personal PC.
Okay.
That's a simple terminology. I think client is a wide topic, and it doesn't include PC only, because inside client we have a lot of ecosystem or like additional hardware pieces that are part of the PC. But essentially client is a endpoint and human touch point of the vision of Intel, which is data-centric company, data-centric vision. That's the last mile of a person connecting to the world and being creative, contributing to the global welfare.
So how much time do you spend talking to those people contributing to the worldwide welfare about AI?
A lot. So my main area of focus from the customer base perspective is enterprise and government. So I mainly talk to the enterprises and public sector in particular. And I am personally measured on their deployment of PCs, of usage of vPro, which is our business client stack of technologies. I'm also measured on activation of some of our manageability solutions that are hardware hardened, so out of band.
So it sounds like you have a list of those basic needs of a typical enterprise client, for example. If you could mention 3 or 4 key pillars of an enterprise system, you don't have to name your customer, obviously.
Sure.
But I'm just trying to understand what are the key things, key technologies that you're looking for while talking to an enterprise customer. Let it be a bank, for example, which would like to install some kind of a system inside. What are the requirements, basically?
Okay, I'll try to be sharp. Actually, FSI sector, so financial services sector, is very much performance dependent, especially if they are not calculating in the cloud, but they are calculating on the endpoint locally. And because of security concerns, they often do so. Second is security that I mentioned. This is a very important factor for a bank or FSI. And third, I would even say there are 4. Third would be manageability. So the concern or the need for those devices to be securely manageable.
Like with vPro, for example?
With vPro, with AMT, for example. So we have great business stack and solution for that. And fourth would be stable, of course, because they require stability of those systems.
So AI is not a typical thing that the enterprise client would seek for?
I would say in the performance space, AI is being used, and we can see significant interest inside this area in terms of performance. Because in the traditional workstation, oftenly you are able to interact with the software that can be optimized with our artificial intelligence engines. So some of the tasks that would normally be performed on the CPU would not be done on the CPU only, but would be accelerated by some of the additional engines. And by that, you obviously offload some of the CPU power. And then it can be used for the other, for example, for brokerage applications and so on.
How important is the cloud when it comes to the big data transformation?
I think you already asked this question before. But the cloud is very important. Basically, we can just look what are companies doing right now. I can give you a very simple statistic about the spend of the companies. So what is the predicted spend on building their own infrastructure versus spend on a public cloud, let's say. So we predict for the next year like a 6% of the increase of a spend for your own traditional infrastructure. Guess what's the percentage of the spend on the public cloud?
That's one of the big numbers. What are the cloud market trends when it comes to spendings, when it comes to, because we're seeing the 6% of
so the 6% was the traditional infrastructure, while the public cloud is about 80% predicted per year. So doesn't matter the numbers, but when you compare, it's like 3 times more. What does it mean for us, to be honest, or to the companies? It's like we are changing the responsibility on equipment. So it's rather let's do not build our own equipment in most of the cases. Maybe we should use what is already there in the cloud. Let's use some other companies, some other people equipment, and just push this responsibility on managing the stuff, on provisioning the stuff, on security and all of other aspects on some other entities. And this is happening and will be happening even more. Obviously differently in a different tempo depending on different segments of the market. It's different for let's say very agile startup versus the very traditional bank, for example. Yeah?
So what are the development areas for the public off and on-prem cloud? What are the development areas that you see when it comes to global trends? Or maybe let me rephrase this question a little bit. What kind of customers are buying services from public cloud sector?
Almost everyone, I would say. Even us as just a normal consumers, I can go to the Google and pay for, let's say, Gmail or Google Photos or Google Drive. That's pretty the same kind of way of thinking on a different scale. Obviously, that's a different scale. But we see, as Intel, we see that movement in almost every customer space. So starting from obviously, think about the HPC customers that needs like a very huge, powerful clusters that are doing some simulation or weather forecasting and stuff like that. It's definitely easier for them in some of the cases to go to the public cloud.
Sure.
Instead of building something for their own, through the enterprises or sort of enterprises, smaller, bigger, to cloud service providers, to the small business as well. But just one comment on that, obviously we see this trend into the public cloud, but we see also the opposite trend, so-called repatriation, very hard word. So after a certain time, some of the companies sees that it's actually more efficient to go back with some of the data and hold them on their own on-prem servers. Yeah? In the middle of those two, we have the hybrid cloud, which I think is the hottest topic at the moment. So we have engines like, let's say, Azure Stack, for example, that can, very in dynamic way put some of the data into the public cloud on the same way they can put it locally and just, make this exchange of the data in a hybrid model. So that's the big trend at the moment.
Where's the biggest boom when it comes to AI as a service? Is that a public cloud domain or a private cloud domain?
Well, it's hard to say. It depends where you look, to be honest. What we can say is that in almost every hypervisor like AWS, Microsoft, Google, and many others, because that's only the main 3, but we have many others, public cloud providers in EMEA and globally, we have certain instances that are ready for AI. It could be a general compute instance, or it could be memory optimized instance, or a specific AI optimized instance. So they are ready to put some data there. Who is putting the AI data? Who is using the models? That's another topic. We can put even the simple model like a speech recognition or voice recognition on a public cloud, and it will work. On the other side, we have, let's say, training of a huge huge models, of the huge data sets, and it's easier to do it on a public cloud because of the scalability and almost unlimited resources in a time.
Do you guys talk a lot about cloud with your customers, Miłosz, for example? Is this the part of your job scope as well?
I'm not discussing specific usage of cloud, but yeah, it is a big topic from a customer as well, because if you are managing many endpoints without usage of a cloud, what's the point?
Yeah, Kamil?
Yes, sure. Popular productivity suite, and that's the one thing. Then sometimes VDI instances can also be in the cloud. Once in a while, and the cloud affinity, so to say. Yes, with enterprise and government, that's a big topic. Surely.
Back to Michał, how often do you talk about AI with your customers, actually?
Oh, it's on an everyday basis, to be honest. Obviously, the discussion may start with a very, let's say, low-level discussion about the products, about the performance of certain products, like you mentioned, our new GPU. Our new GPU architecture that we are launching, going through, let's say, workload placement discussions. So I have this workload, where should I put it? On a public cloud, on-prem, on which instance, and so on and so forth. But to me personally, the most fascinating discussion is about the use case. About the use case, so more related to the software, what these small companies like startups are doing really. So a couple of years ago, maybe we didn't even know what kind of use case we're gonna have using the AI, the chatbots, for example, very sophisticated chatbots that you cannot really discover if it is a human person or not. Or recommendation engines. We are bombarding every day with some, recommendations for a products, for a new songs, for basically everything based on our behaviors.
That's a part of the big data.
Yes, and you can think about, the future use cases, like, for example, our own body, our own health. So AI can gather data about yourself and predict maybe your lifetime, how long it's going to be, or maybe some potential disease or something like that.
Do you have a client that has such an application of
It's strictly confidential at the moment, so I cannot tell you. I can tell you that we are working on a dating app that is looking for a best partner. Based on your criteria.
We'll place the link down below.
And your choices from the past. So this is happening.
Talking about use cases, we have the most variety of different use cases can be seen inside the IoT landscape, definitely. So which kind of vertical inside the IoT landscape, because we have definitely what are those verticals, and the most popular ones when it comes to IoT?
Yeah, there's retail, healthcare, smart cities, public safety, transportation, autonomous driving. There are a lot of use cases, as you mentioned. There are a lot of these.
Which are those that we focus on when it comes to AI?
Nowadays, during pandemic times, when it comes to healthcare, this market started to invest a lot in AI models when it comes to medical imaging. Maybe not only medical imaging, because there is a AI model which can recognize if you had or have a COVID only by your cough. It is based on AI.
It's based on the sound. Triangulation. Okay. Which sector do we focus when it comes to investment inside Intel? What is the most focused vertical inside IoT landscape? What is the strategy there?
I don't have the best grasp of it, to be honest, but I see the main focus in AI when it comes to video and vision applications. That's definitely the biggest investment.
Can you say why?
Why? Because of the history of AI. When you saw this big boom like 20 years ago, when we started to build libraries like OpenCV,
computer vision. It's all based on computer vision.
Yes,
right?
It's based on computer vision, and it's made by Intel. And this market actually it's growing rapidly, so maybe that's the reason.
So how often actually do you talk about AI with your customers? Is this on a daily basis? Is every customer thinking about?
No. It's not all customers who are considering AI, but majority of them is actually start thinking about implementing some AI capabilities. Definitely majority. It's not like
Sure.
of course.
Yeah, I would like to add something that according to another statistics, I think majority of the companies or people in general are talking about the AI, but only like 10% or something like that is actually implementing something or already starting to do something. And what does it tell us is that this is the future topic that will be, more and more visible on this implementation phase in the close future. So that's why it's good that, for example, Intel as a company has already started this job like many years ago, and we are ready for that boom that is ahead of us.
Yeah. So coming back to the data, because it's all about, it starts with the data, with the big data acquisition, data at the edge.
Yes.
What is the importance of edge nodes when it comes to edge to cloud systems? Is that the major role? How important it is? What kind of role does it play in this whole edge to cloud data pipeline?
I think it plays a major role in this data transformation, because that's the endpoint when we actually gather data.
Does it only acquire data?
No. We of course have on the edge.
It can process it, right?
Yes, we have CPU. We have to store this data. We have to analyze this data. That's where AI actually improves our results, because we are filtering unnecessary, redundant data and going to the cloud with something which is relevant to the application, to the customer needs, and so on and so on. But yeah, edge, I think, actually, Michał mentioned that we are talking about edge to cloud transformation and evolution. So these two nodes, they play like this. This works like a synergy.
Absolutely. How important is the edge, or the maybe not the endpoint in terms of the CCG? Maybe this is not the good word, but if we talk about the edge device itself, like a gateway or simply a camera, like a data acquisition technology with some power of pre-processing it, how important it is from the perspective of the CCG business? Does it play any role? Do you talk about data acquisition, cameras, smart devices, connected devices?
I wouldn't say so, but it's actually my background, because I started at Intel working for the IoT group, and I can still remember some of those discussions and how important data acquisition was and how important filtering of the data was. In the endpoint space, we do not necessarily care about it that much.
It's not
Maybe
really
not
relevant
yet.
to your
it's not
business scope.
that much relevant, but I believe it's a very important topic.
What about the cloud? Do you talk about the endpoints, data acquisition with your customers? How important it is?
Yeah, very much. Not necessarily, not only with a cloud, but in general for a data center. Let's imagine a company who has a data center and they have some service running on the cloud or on-prem, doesn't matter, and they provide it to the end customer. How much important is the latency, for example?
Yeah.
Yes, when you think about the video, maybe latency is just too big for the end customers and they are not happy with the service, the quality. Then I have a lot of examples of these data center companies looking into the edge devices, into the edge solutions to move some of this data workload services closer to us, to the users. Sometimes they build it by their own, but in most of the cases they're using the ecosystem. So the other companies that are already specializing in edge have experience in edge, and they can just by the joint collaboration just build something really unusual. We have one of these projects in Poland recently. And this is, by the way, where Intel can help as a company with the ecosystem, with connecting different entities, different companies. So my customer can talk directly to Miłosz customer. We can do it, the matchmaking with the 5 minutes.
So it's all synergy. It's combination
Synergy.
of different business units inside Intel.
Yeah.
We're not siloed when it comes to different
Absolutely.
market segments,
Another
right?
example could be, for example, VDI workloads, when this DCG and CCG connects together with a same solution, with the same kind of vision. So this is what we are doing, how we are cooperating together.
Special task roadmap, which is called the embedded one.
Right.
How important is AI on that roadmap? Do you have any specific technologies that you talk about, like, for example, how important is OpenVINO when it comes to?
It is, because OpenVINO is the toolkit specifically, maybe not specifically, but majority of OpenVINO applications include vision, which is big topic for AI, for IoT. So the big market, this is huge market actually. By 2025, we are seeing that this market, AI IoT market, will grow up to $66 billion.
Yep.
So yeah, it is huge potential. So yeah, we definitely are focused on AI in IoT.
Let's wrap this up, gentlemen. I have 2 questions at the end of our conversation. One of those is, I would like to know your opinion on what is your point of view? Is this whole AI rush that we see yet another wave, or do we have the means and good enough business justification this time to make a real use of artificial intelligence? And I would like Kamil to answer this.
I think that AI significancy is essential for business of technological companies, and I'm keeping fingers crossed that we will never be in the situation where the amount of data flood is such a big flood that artificial intelligence will not handle that.
Okay. Does anybody has anything to add?
Maybe, some people are thinking that maybe it's only buzzword, some, fancy marketing saying, but
That's exactly the thing.
that's the thing for majority of the people. But if you are inside IT, or maybe if you are working with IT people, we already know that it's not a buzzword. This technology is out there. We are flooded with AI. Actually, even if you don't think about it, you can, grab your closest smartphone and one push button talk with your voice assistant. It's AI. So yeah.
Does it really help us?
It depends what we are using it for.
Do you use voice assistants?
From time to time.
Kamil has something to add.
There is one thing that I'm very hoping won't happen. I don't want the world to become attacked by the Skynet that we know well from the Terminator, right? We don't want to lose control, and I'm hoping we will not.
So
it's in our hands, by the way.
For the time being, but people like Elon Musk are already warning us about the exponential growth of artificial intelligence, which can take control in some time. So looking at some of the applications, does it really bring any additional value, positive or supportive value, to an average person life, or is this just a better justification of your business offering and a better way to monetize your business? So are we dealing with something that is making our lives better, or we are dealing with something which is making our businesses more lucrative?
I think both. because, for example, Spotify or YouTube or all other recommendation engines make my life a little better. I like it in reasonable dose, let's say so. So I think it depends on us, on what kind of AI solutions are we building. Are they really valuable to us? But on the other hand, it's obviously a business, because what is the AI? To be honest, it's an engine of getting the business insights out of the data. So for sure, we can be sure that data will be growing. So also if we want a better business insights, so the money at the end of the day, also the AI engines needs to grow as well. So that's I think we can be sure that it's gonna be like that.
Miłosz, anything to add?
Yes, actually, well-selected data is a valuable business asset, right? And from the consumer perspective, it actually makes our life better. If you have more efficient, more accurate, better healthcare, why it's not making your life better?
That's one of the big examples, yeah.
Yeah, when it goes to the shop, when it comes to the retail, and your shelves are always full because of the AI, because the stock is analyzed. So yeah, AI definitely brings a lot of value for end customers and for businesses.
So let us keep monetizing our businesses and keep changing the world for better.
Definitely.